Hi, aloha, and welcome to the Empowered Empath podcast. I think we're going to start adding the "that's not normal" at the end. I've decided this. It was from our last podcast. So if that's confusing for anybody, if we start calling the podcast "That's Not Normal," it's called the Empowered Empath "That's Not Normal" podcast. But anyways, my name is Jennifer O'Neil.
And I'm Michelle Schneider, and here to give you a friendly reminder that if you like today's topic, to please give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already.
So today we are going to be talking about categorizing your emotions, or I don't know, like,
well, I think
into this one because
I think this is something
that's the right word. Yeah.
That's been on my mind a lot. And I do feel like, with the energy, we're in a lot of like volatile kind of stuff. It's very emotionally triggered. And when we're emotionally triggered, I feel like sometimes we can let it get the best of us. I feel like, for examples, it's like if you're going to have hard conversations, it's like, why am I letting my emotions make me sick over these hard conversations? And like, how can I better use my emotions or observe my emotions and not let them take control of me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think that people need to realize a couple of different things. One is everybody assumes that emotions are kind of running them. In essence, it's a reaction to something, right? Current. Let me rephrase that. It's a reaction to something that's currently happening. What I notice in my line of work, in spiritual work, as far as psychic stuff, empath stuff, emotions are typically triggered by experiences in the past. They're not always like an appropriate emotional response to your current situations. And that's why I think that it causes people a lot of problems, a lot of being sick to their stomach, a lot of issues working through things, because you have two things typically working against you when it comes to emotionally all of a sudden just feeling sick or upset or worried. Two things are typically working against you. Number one, you're looking at past experiences, or you're all of a sudden your body's triggered by past experiences, or number two, you are triggered by probable future outcomes. And the issue between the two is your body, start having this emotional response that you feel like you don't have any control over. And like I said, that's never really true. You do have control over your emotions. But sometimes I think if you're in that thought process or that train of thought that emotions are just happening to me, this is just my response, you need to understand where your response is typically coming from if you want to be healthier with it.
Yeah.
And to take that one step further, why I would want to see people have more healthy responses is because emotions are very closely linked to your spiritual frequency. So you have an emotional body that is very closely linked to your spiritual frequency. It actually dictates your spiritual frequency. And therefore, it's going to be extremely important for you to understand how that's affecting your reality and your physical environment. So emotional responses, I feel like you have a responsibility to kind of filter through them if you want to stay in a healthy place vibrationally, frequency wise, spiritual body wise, then physical body wise, because everything stems from the root of, your emotional body. And what I mean by everything is your physical reality, your physical body. That's where everything starts. It's where everything grows from. And I think it's been widely accepted at this point in time that, I just have an emotional response to that. Like that, I can't control how I feel. Do you know how you hear that all the time? I can't control how I feel about this. Well, that's not true at all. How you feel about something is based on history, and it's based on a perspective and a belief. It's also based upon fears and worries of probable outcomes, or even positive thoughts about their future, but it's based on a lot of different things, because you might have like super excited emotions. We're always talking about like negative things, but you might
Yeah.
have like positive emotions that people don't understand either. And maybe you're like in this positive space and maybe you are in a healthy space. But if you're in a healthy space emotionally, this podcast right now is not for you.
Yeah.
so, so
Give
you're
it a like
doing good.
anyway,
You're
subscribe,
good.
and then just move on.
Yeah, you can subscribe, move on, but that's not necessarily who we're speaking to. We're speaking to people that, they're having trouble navigating emotions about something. They're having trouble navigating maybe anticipatory emotions. I think that
Yeah.
that was one of the things that you recently struggled with, that you were like,
Yeah.
why is this happening to me?
Yeah, and I'll be super generic about it, but I do have an example because it's like I had a hard conversation, obviously, that I needed to make. Now, while it wasn't, bad, I'm like super excited for what comes, after this. It's like I should be on cloud nine. I should be over the moon. But thinking about having this conversation was literally making me sick. I wanted to vomit. I needed to go to the bathroom. Like it was just too much and it was
Mhm.
overwhelming. And I could just feel the anxiety like bubbling up inside of me. And so it was like I was getting ready to have this conversation. I was sending a message and I could just feel everything. My heart's racing. I feel just like I'm going to lose it. And I'm like, why do I let myself do this? Why do I let it get this
Well,
triggered?
let me ask you a question. When you were having this interaction, were you anticipating a response that was negative?
Yes.
Okay, that's why. That's what I mean. That's what people do. You might be anticipating a negative response where somebody else might going, meh, don't really care if there's a negative response. I'm not attached to their reaction. Or they might have been like so fed up with an experience or a situation that they're just like, it doesn't matter. I have to move on. And they're just glad to let the whole system go. You had probably some type of heart tie to where you just want everything to feel good and calm, but you're anticipating it not to be. So clearly,
Yeah.
again, that's your projection. This
Yeah.
is what causes people a lot of problems. And if you were someone that said, you're not, but if you were somebody that was like, I can't control my emotions, that's not true, because your emotional response was based on something that wasn't even factual. It was based
Mm.
upon a scenario in your head that could probably be the outcome, is how your brain was working with that. And so then you have these emotional responses in the body. People don't even realize, especially when it comes to um, anxiety type things or moon stuff, planetary alignment, that oftentimes there's a response within the body prior to you even thinking up a scenario. And then the brain goes, I need to place this to something. And so it goes to a scenario and now it becomes this triggered emotional response. So then we start training the body and the brain to have these triggered emotional responses to something or some scenario. So it might be how people are going to react to you in your life. It might be how you feel like your life is going, maybe your reality. You might be like, everything always happens to me. Why is this always happening to me? And so now you're training your body, you're training your mind to look for negativity. Then it's going to match an emotion that then aligns with that negative thought process. So there's a lot of training, physical training with your brain and your physical body that are tied to emotional responses. So, what I like people to do is take a moment that's not a word, when they're having an emotional response to something, and filter and just take a step back for something or from that thing and start to filter. is this an appropriate emotional response? Number one, is this matching the experience or the interaction? Number one, because oftentimes if you're having an over the top emotional response, it's typically not matching what's going on because you've escalated it for other reasons, such as history. Maybe you had a really bad day and that was just the straw that just broke the camel's back at that point. It
Yeah.
just blew up everything. So or maybe the astrological energy is heightened and you're like, why am I having this response? So I like people to take an emotion that they're not feeling comfortable with. If you're feeling uncomfortable with your emotion, take a step back from it for a second and filter it. What history is attached to that? What have you had happen in the past? Then I'd like you to change it, because I don't like it when people have constant negative emotional responses to things that are based upon history, because that's no way to change your future. It's no way to change future probable outcomes. And if you don't want to repeat the same pattern over and over again in your life, you need to be very conscientious of triggered emotional reactions. And then you need to filter. You need to go, is this appropriate? Why am I feeling this way? And then you need to start going, I could probably change this if this happened. This could be a different scenario. This could be a different future outcome. This could be good in this way. I think that people naturally go to, again, we've talked about this over and over again, to fear all the time. They're constantly going to fear, fear, fear. And I don't think that that's the best place to live with your frequency. But oftentimes, or I would say, it's very probable that most people listening have also trained themselves in a fear-based scenario. And so that aligns all the things. It aligns your emotional responses. And so then your body's going to have a physical reaction, of course.
Yeah.
You're going to have a physical reaction to something negative happening. That doesn't feel good to people. Something worrisome happening does not feel good to your body. You're going to feel nauseous. You're going to feel upset. These are your body's responses to, I'm not in love with this feeling right now.
Yes.
It's not necessarily the response to, I'm not in love with this experience. It's telling you it's not in love with the frequency that you are living in at the moment. And your emotions are your frequency. They will dictate your frequency. They are dominant within your frequency. And your physical body's like, I don't like this. I want off this ride. It is your job then to go, okay, let's get off this ride and go on, let's get off the roller coaster and let's go on the little merry-go-round. That seems nicer. So, it's your job to change that. It's your job to rework those emotions, because they're guided by your perception and your belief system.
Which is totally what I was able to do in this instance. Thank goodness it was the conversation when I sent the message. It didn't happen right away. So I had about 3 hours. And so the question that I've been asking myself lately, whenever I start to feel really uncomfortable, is, how can I change this frequency? And so I started doing all kinds of stuff, like just in an attempt to calm me down. I played nature music on my YouTube channel so that I could just get into sort of a different headspace. It was a lot calmer. I called in some angels. I started like writing myself some like inspirational notes too. And I just started feeling so much better that by the time I did have the conversation. And the other thing I kept doing is I kept repeating, well, what if this just went perfectly smooth? Like, what if this was just such an easy conversation? And when I had the conversation, it was easy. And I
Right.
was
So
so proud of myself.
what I typically do in those scenarios, if I start to feel upset or nervous or worried about something, I just go to, wouldn't it be amazing if this happened? And I just fully embrace into, this would be awesome. This would be like, almost like you're making up an imaginary scenario that I would love it if this happened. And then this was said, and then this was the feeling afterwards. So I really focus upon the scenario, but what I focus upon the most is after that, I'm left feeling, wow, that was really easy. Wow, that went very smoothly. Wow, I'm just feeling very peaceful after that. So I really focus upon the emotion after the event. So like if I was having a conversation or an experience, or maybe I'm doing something new. A lot of people will do that with something new that they're going to experience. Maybe they're traveling somewhere they've never been before and they start having that anxiety and they start having an emotional response and their body starts, getting a little nauseous, and then they get IBS going on the airplane and whatever. What you want to do is gravitate towards thinking about getting there and going, wow, this is a really cool space, but or even going past that and thinking about then coming back home, if like you're going on an airplane and you're like, wow, that was one of the funnest trips I had. That was absolutely amazing. I want to do that again. And then you focus on those feelings in the body. So now what happens frequency wise is you've moved yourself out of fear and worry in the body's frequency to peace and fun and wow, that was great. The body doesn't know the difference between time and days and all the things. All it knows is, oh, thank God we're feeling peaceful now. We're feeling love. We're feeling, oh, everything's okay. We're feeling calmness. That's all it knows. It doesn't know that you're attaching it to a probable fear of whatever. All it knows is what it's feeling at the moment in time, and that's all it cares about. So you want to keep your frequency in the best place that you possibly can at all times. I like your technique because if they're so worried that they're looping and obsessing about the fear or the worry, the only way to break a habit of looping and spiraling is distraction. And so I actually teach that as a technique where you want to distract yourself. You want to go to music, a show, nature, have a conversation with a friend that might not entail what you're worried about, but like something that is distracting your mind from the emotion. It then will fit that emotional space, your frequency will then be filled in with other vibrational frequencies. So for instance, if you start listening to music, most people that can help line up their frequency quite quickly. And then they start, maybe you're thinking about it, but you start moving a little bit with music and you start kind of getting into the rhythm, and then you get into a happier space. Your frequency is just changing right before your eyes. That's really just the trick. If you're starting to you go out in nature and then the sun hits you and you breathe the fresh air and you're feeling good, then yeah, you're going to be distracted by maybe the birds singing, and then you're like, wow, that's really cool. Oh, the sun feels really good. I love that feeling on my skin. And, you're going to be distracted, and then those emotions are going to be replaced. And I want people to view it as it's very important to your current life experience, but also important to your tomorrow, because if you're not careful about your vibrational frequency, which is dictated by your emotions, and we don't keep ourselves in the place of positivity, peace, and prosperity and love, then we're going to draw in frequencies that match something the opposite of those. And when you draw those in, oftentimes the result will be the next day or later that day. So you want to be really careful about the like attracting like as far as vibrational frequencies go. I have a lot about that in the Universal Laws book. If people want to know about that, just go to Amazon, and I break that way down in the Universal Laws book.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, it completely makes sense.
Yeah. So as far as compartmentalizing emotions, I think that also it's very important to separate from emotions for a minute and get into an observational standpoint. It's important to know that your emotional vibrational frequency will dictate your physical health. I think that that is huge to know. So I think that we would then um, want to be careful, because I see a lot of chronically ill people that are working with their health and their vibrational frequency, and they make huge adjustments, huge strides and changes in their life for the better, and their health starts to improve. It's all based upon the frequency, which is based upon the emotional reactions to things and people and places. So you always start there, always. How are you feeling about things? Are you feeling responsible? Are you feeling guilty? Are you feeling desperate? Are you feeling hopeless? You always have to start, you have to probe and look for negative emotional frequencies, because your body will physically react to those: nauseous, sick to your stomach, IBS, anxiety, overwhelm. And if you feed those emotions to your physical body long enough, if they are your dominant frequency long enough, the body will break down. And that's when we have major issues, chronic issues,
Yeah.
fibromyalgia, chronic inflammation, cancers, things of that nature. It needs to be what it, the body needs a dominant, healthy frequency, a dominant, positive frequency to heal itself. We stand in our way of going, emotions are harmless. That's another thing that I find very interesting. People focus so much upon their verbiage when it comes to their I don't know, frequency, I guess I would say. They're so focused upon verbiage and what they would say that they think emotions don't really hold much. But even just with the podcast that we just did on telepathy, that we were just talking about this, verbiage is a very physically based language and experience.
Yeah.
Energy and telepathy and all the emotional body, which we didn't add into the telepathy podcast, but the energetic frequency is what dominates most of all your experiences. It's going to dominate your spiritual experiences. It's going to dominate your physical experiences. It's going to be primary, and it's going to be very, very important. But yet the emotions get dismissed. And I find that very strange. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I understand it. They feel very blasé, like it's just a fleeting thing.
Yeah, I would say that that only has to be true for somebody who maybe hasn't experienced such intense, because I've joked to myself so many times that emotions are gonna be the death of me because of how
Okay, well,
much
stop saying that.
because of how much I have let them hurt me physically, I guess. I get
Yeah.
so worked up and then I get so sick, and then
Mhm.
I'm on my deathbed, it's just like it's not a good time. And so I don't want that to be the case. And I know that it's like I'll run into things from time to time that might trigger something, but it's like for the most part, I just want to stay away from the negativity and the fear as much as I can so that I'm not having these physical issues.
Yeah, I think that you've learned that over a lot of work that you've done in the spirit realm, and you've learned how much that those things tie together. I
Yeah.
think that typical people just don't get it. However, I would like people to comment on this, because how many times does anxiety make you sick to your stomach? How many times have you been nauseous from going into this place or having this conversation? How many times have you had IBS because of whatever that you were anticipating or a situation you've been in? It's your physical body's response to a frequency that it is not in love with, and it's begging for you to change the frequency. And the frequency starts with your perspective and your belief system. And you can always find the good in everything. You really, really can. I would say that that is people's downfall that I would like them to be able to improve upon, because even as a psychic and a spiritual teacher, I oftentimes see a light, several lights at the end of people's tunnels. I see positivity oftentimes at the end of people's tunnels. Like they get tunnel vision and they're so worried, and they're people don't like change. Oh my, they do not like change. If you they say they want change, but when they're experiencing change, they lose their mind. They're like, this is unfamiliar, it doesn't feel good. That's basically what it is energetically, is it's unfamiliar and it doesn't feel good. And then they start with the fear and the worry, and then it might be a change in a job, a change in relationship, a change in your money structure. It doesn't matter, a change in your health. You immediately go to the worst because change is so unfamiliar that it feels scary. But if you never have change, you don't get to the really cool parts of your life. And
Yeah.
so when I'm doing readings, oftentimes I'm like, thank God this catalyst is happening with this person, because it's going to direct them to this direction, which is where they've been resisting going for all this long time. Thank goodness that they're experiencing this, because I see something positive on the other side. So I would say way, way more than not, I see something cool happening at the end of a change or an experience that you're unfamiliar and uncomfortable with. I many more times than I don't, I will see something very cool and positive on the other end of that. The person who's in it would beg to differ 18 different ways to Sunday. Hence why they're usually calling for a reading. But it's really interesting and kind of sad, really, how often that I see why it's good and why it's going to unfold in a very wonderful way. Yet they feel like they're literally on, the Viper roller coaster that is never going to stop, and
Yeah.
it's never going to let them off. And they're terrified and nauseous the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah. So you want to understand that your emotions are very heavily involved with your physical body and your physical health. You want to understand your emotions are not something that happens to you. They are usually based upon past experience, future fears. You are also in control of your emotions. You can dictate them. But we're like little children sometimes, that we just be like, wow, we have no control. You do have control. It's based upon your perspective, your viewpoint, your belief system. So you will want to pull back and observe, maybe observe it like it's another person, so that you can have a more objective, neutral standpoint, and pull back from the emotions so you're not in it. And then the last trick would be look for the positivity, the positive probable outcomes. You could do Michelle's trick if you have to, which is distraction first. And I do teach people that.
It was the
Or
quickest way.
it's the quickest way. My quickest way is I don't need the distraction anymore. I don't think that you would necessarily. You could just go straight into, I'm going to create this experience the way that I want it to look. Actually, that is another podcast I'd like to get into. So let's do that one. Write that on our list. Creating the experience, creating the outcome the way that you want to. And that's based upon something that I think is so funny. I'm going to leave the people with this because it is going to make everybody laugh. It was my son's birthday the other day, and we were talking about manifesting and different things. And this was way early on. I mean, I was young, and I was talking about with my daughter. I was pregnant, and I was just enjoying the pregnancy, and she came out absolutely beautiful and everything. But I was along for the ride in the pregnancy. But when I had my son, during these times, which freaks my daughter out and all the other young people out there, you didn't have an ultrasound that told you what the sex of the baby was or any of those things. And I really wanted a boy. because we had a girl, and so did my husband. We wanted one of each, but you don't know. You might have two girls, whatever. And so I thought, well, if I'm creating this baby, why can't I create it the way that I want to? And so I was telling my daughter-in-law's sister, I said, so it's kind of like build a baby, like build a bear. I thought, why can't I build a baby? So I started with all the qualities that I wanted. I wanted him to be a boy. I wanted him to pull from the Filipino side. I wanted him to have my husband's eyes and my husband's lips. And there was a nice combination of both of us. And every day I was just like, I'm creating this baby. I'm creating this life. So why can't I create it the way I want to? And it was really interesting. And I did it every day, every single day. I just felt that I was doing this and my body was creating this. And I had no idea. I didn't know. It was an experiment. I was just playing around. And sure enough, he came out exactly. I already knew what he looked like before he came out because it was exactly what I had pictured. And so, yeah, you can build a baby. I was telling her, I'm like, why are not more people doing this? But I would like to get into that further, into building your reality, and understanding that. So I'll probably repeat that story, but I think we need to put that on our list.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. Until next time.
Yeah, give the video a like if you enjoyed the topic. If you have any questions that you want to add, you can leave those in the comments, and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yeah, and I'm going to do a poll. We may change the podcast. I keep thinking about it. So, Not So Normal Podcast. If you like that, if you like the name, comment below.
Build a baby isn't the most normal thing, is it?
It is not. And it just came to me telepathically. That's what my guides probably told me to say. So it's very catchy. It was understandable. I think that people get it when you say it that way. Like people can relate. They get a visual. It's weird, but it's true. So yeah, there you go. All right. So yeah, comment if you have any other questions or comments. We'll be going further into this on the next one of based upon the build a baby. Oh my. Okay. So definitely tell us if you like the new name that we've changed. Maybe it's a new thing for 2025, the Not So Normal Podcast. And we'll talk soon. So have the most amazing day. Aloha. Bye.
Bye.